They came up with this order themselves. First, Daniel Valentin. He's an international studies major. He's focusing on development in Islamic and Middle Eastern studies. He has a minor in Arabic and a writing certificate, too. He studied abroad in Fez, Morocco, Pondicherry, India. He's fluent in Spanish and Arabic. That's neat, Arabic. In his time as an undergraduate, he has held positions in student organizations around campus. He's a student clerk for the University of Iowa Healthcare. He's also an ESL tutor for Kirkwood Community College. He enjoys writing fiction and personal nonfiction stories, camping, backpacking, and letter writing. So please, well, shall I introduce them separately? I'm thinking, yes, okay. So first of all, we'll hear from Daniel. Please help me to welcome.
I just ripped his sheet. Sorry about that. Welcome, everyone, to the peak of my career. No, let me start by saying what an immense honor it is to get to present at an ICFRC lecture. To help prepare, I was told to speak as if you're speaking to your best friend, not a room full of people. But my best friends know that I'm a lot to handle, so I'm just going to pretend you're a regular audience. I'm going to pretend you're a regular audience and let the chips fall where they may. I've been an intern here for a few years, like these two. I make the preview and trivia cards at your table. If you have any complaints about the trivia, you can always email me at rachel-maggi@uiowa.edu. In my international studies major, I've focused on development in Islamic Middle Eastern studies, like Art said, but it was the latter that led me to my first experience abroad, which was Fez, Morocco, like you said. The city is home to the oldest continually operating and first degree earning university in the whole world, Jamiat al-Qarawiyyin, founded in the Old Medina in 859 AD. During the summer of 2016, I spent 6.5 weeks living with a host family deep in the labyrinth that is the Old Medina. We spoke only Moroccan Arabic, sometimes in modern standard Arabic if I got confused. I would walk to the new city and back each day to study advanced level Arabic at the American Language Institute in Fez, or ALIF. It was my first time leaving the United States, my first time on an airplane, and I'm still so glad Morocco was my first destination, and I'll tell you why. There were 3 small interactions that I had on my first international experience that left a profound impact on me. These were all with complete strangers, mind you. The first took place after school on the first day. Moroccan students would see international students from the US or Europe, sit us down just to talk and practice their English. One of the boys saw me studying at a table in the green and blue mosaic courtyard. I remember how excited he looked. His English was distinctly eloquent and much better than that of most native English speakers I know. He wanted... It's true. He wanted to know what I thought of Morocco because he already had a pretty good view of the United States, even though it was the 2016 primaries. When he asked me what Americans think of Moroccans, conversation screeched to a halt. I did tell him about the stigmas and stereotypes facing Muslims in America. First, he was confused. He had never heard this. I told him lots of Americans sadly harbor negative feelings against the Islamic community out of ignorance. He was horrified, as if he was completely unaware, scrambling to make sense of it. I shrugged and told him I knew better. He told me that regardless of what happens in other Islamic countries, the United States and Morocco have always been in close relations. This was news to me at the time. Most people I talk to can't even point to Morocco on a map, even when I tell them it's the one south of Spain. This conversation was the motivation behind my honors research thesis paper, which investigates why in recent history, the United States and Morocco hold such positive relations. It only occurred to me to study this after Brett Cloyd advised my classmates and me to pursue what he calls beautiful questions when doing research. I'm pretty sure that's what I've done, and it's the only academic paper I've ever written that made me a little emotional when finishing. So thank you, Brett. The next meaningful interaction I had took place at night in the northern Sahara Desert, 7 hours south by bus. After riding on camel caravan for 2.5 more hours, sand occasionally blowing on our faces, my fellow students and I sprawled around a camp in a small oasis, and then some of us crawled up an enormous sand dune to get a good view of the stars. I saw 7 shooting stars that night. At that point, I'd gotten to know everyone pretty well, except one. I sat next to her, and she introduced herself. I remember she jumped right into religion, telling me she grew up in a very Christian family, but had recently become a devout Sufi Muslim. I had never met a Sufi Muslim. I asked her about the transition, and she told me the whole story. I was astounded at her in-depth knowledge of all sorts of different religions and systems of faith all across the world, large and small, and in such fine detail. By all accounts, she was more of a theologian than any professional theologian I'd met. Then she asked what I was. She had never met a non-believer. I told her I grew up in a Catholic family, but nowadays I'm not really religious or spiritual at all. I like being honest about that kind of thing. It turned out she had never met a non-believer. I usually expect someone who hears my worldviews to, be uncomfortable, maybe correct it and assert their own faith-based one. Not her. She began asking me about my worldview out of curiosity, and I asked her about hers. We talked for hours just to get a clear picture of the other. We talked about what it really means to live a life beyond ourselves, the pursuit of pursuing morals, like the point of pursuing morals, if there even is one, power dynamics and influences in different religious establishments, and what a perfect world might look like. No interference, no filters, no censorship, nothing held back. I don't get to do that here in the Midwest. Truly, my only issue with that conversation was that it ended. This made me stop focusing so much about how people choose to identify and start observing how people's identities get manifested in their different behaviors. I guess what I'm trying to say is that a Sufi Muslim made me a better non-believer. We had similarly great conversations when we got back to Fez, however few. She is very much just a world traveler, so she had to go. I kept this discussion in my mind in the last few days of being president of Secular Students at Iowa, when we all put on a panel to help dismantle stereotypes and hear stories from 6 different religious communities. We heard from a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim, a Mormon, a Baha'i, and an atheist. When I told my dad about this, he thought I was setting up a joke. The last interaction took place in the Alif Riyadh in the Old Medina during Ramadan. After the cannon went off at exactly 6:30 p.m., we began eating iftar, or futur in Morocco. Dinner here means breakfast, literally break fast. To prepare, community members, including me, would run through the markets and find bread, sweets, dates, and tons of clean water for everyone to drink. It was great for bonding and learning the streets. My favorite food, harira, which is a vegetable soup with chickpeas, often made an appearance at futur. There was never enough of it. Nothing good ever lasts. I ate with various residents of the old city that night, getting to know them. I could see one stranger, though, was making a point not to talk to me. That's fine. My friend Samir noticed this and asked the stranger why he was reluctant to speak to me. And the stranger looked right at me and he said, "You Americans are all the same. You come to Morocco, we meet each other, we become friends, and then you leave. And I never hear from you again. I'm just another item on your resume." He was right. That's exactly what we do. I didn't know any better at the time, and I wish I did. Judging by what he said, this was routine for him. He didn't get hurt by this once, but over and over again, by University of Iowa students. Maybe I'm just being a sap, but I at least started questioning the ethics and intentions of partaking in international programs. They very much just give you a thing to do somewhere else, but they don't take into account sincerity on our part as individuals. In fact, I think sometimes we get enabled to be insincere through photographs, as if people abroad exist to be the items in our selfies and other photos that we post on social media with cute little captions for people to see. And this man certainly wasn't the odd one out. This kind of thing is very common. And it doesn't matter what program you're in. It's always up to the individual to examine the effects of their actions. Because there's nothing wrong with documenting your trip, just so long as you don't dehumanize anyone in the process. I don't see what the big mystery is there, but I guess it's harder for some people than others, and that's fine. I think this experience made me focus on being more deliberate and invested in my friendships, to cherish the time I spend with people in my life so that I don't accidentally utilize or exploit them, making them feel like the man across from me at dinner. After all of this, I spent 2 years preparing a Fulbright application to teach English in Morocco. I didn't get it. You don't hear about the ones who don't get it. What's there to talk about? And the responses are all the same, too. People said to me, their loss, what could they be thinking? You'll find something even better, and they'll regret not taking you. It's entirely possible that I didn't qualify. 12 spots open, and at least 80 people apply every year. I'm an undergrad, for goodness sakes. And some of the people that apply for this thing have way more outstanding credentials than I do. My time preparing just clearly wasn't enough, and that's all right. I gave myself a chance. Now I was asked if I'm going to apply again for somewhere else, and I said, I don't know. What I should have just said was no, like, to be honest, because it wasn't about being a Fulbrightee. It was about doing great work in a place I love. And that's another thing. I've felt a lot of pressure to have something big and important lined up for after I graduate, and I'm still figuring it out. And I think that's an important point to make, because there comes a point when life stops caring about our visions. Even after we, put all this work in applying, and I'm not going to stop applying. I'll tell you that. Like, doing nothing isn't an option. Just based on what I've learned through my international studies education, I'm applying for Peace Corps to teach English, hopefully in Albania. And in the meantime, there are some internships in DC and New York that I'm also looking at. Maybe I'll get a work visa from Morocco or some other Arabic-speaking country. Maybe I'll get TEFL certified and teach English abroad with authority. These are the kinds of things I'm considering, knowing these experiences lead to new possibilities. Meanwhile, I have to graduate. And then if I'm lucky, I'll get to continue working on a fiction story I've started. Lots to do, lots to do. Anyway, I'm keeping an open mind as I start my career. I'm looking to approach it all the same. I'm looking to approach it the same way I did this speech. Because even after all my hard work, I'm eventually just going to have to roll with things. But I'll be better for it, being sure to take my stories and my experiences with me and continue having new ones.